Our greatest gift sometimes comes from overcoming our greatest challenge. Life has 7 planes of existence. We have a physical body, and then, would you believe, around us we have an aura? And do you know that that aura is coming from our invisible bodies? Well, we call them invisible. The essence is so subtle, the physical matter is so subtle, that it seems more like an essence, and that gives us an aura. Now, just outside our physical body, we find our astral body, the storehouse of our emotions. And then a little bit further out, we find the mental body, the storehouse of our thoughts and knowledge and wisdom. And then a bit further, the causal body, nirvanic body, atmic body, spiritual bodies, and so forth. You know, when we enter the room, our total being might be 20 feet wide. Our physical body's not, but our invisible bodies reach out there. How do you know this? Well, maybe you're standing in a room and someone comes in the door and you instantly feel either acceptance or rejection. You feel their energy bodies, and you don't know why you're feeling acceptance or rejection, but it's their vibration. You know, we can almost feel someone in a dark place, and maybe we accept them, or maybe we feel anxious about that. You know, our spiritual essence is vibration. Everything in life is vibration. Every atom in our body is conscious. Consciousness exists in all things. You know that the idea of consciousness continues after death. Our consciousness is eternal. Our physical body comes and goes, but our consciousness continues eternally, forever. So the idea that at the end of this life it's all over is a mistaken idea, because after death we are the same person with the same emotions and the same intellect and the same thoughts and feelings that we had in life. When our awareness expands, we can hear the voice within. The voice speaks guidance and wisdom into our hearts. Let me tell you a story about the Bible. You know that when I was young, I listened to the Bible stories, and I listened to them literally. Imagined myself being part of those stories. Let's talk about Exodus. You know, I can imagine as a child being in bondage in Egypt and being led into the promised land. But I didn't fully grasp the deeper meaning of that story until much later. I found a series of 7 volumes called New Age Bible Interpretation by Corinne Helene. And in that, I read her interpretation of Exodus. And I discovered the spiritual story of Exodus. You know, the Pharaoh represented the intellect, the ego. And Moses represented the spiritual man. You know, the ego is pretty powerful, and it kind of controls our life until we learn to subdue it. All those plagues that were cast upon Pharaoh were there to diminish his ego. It takes several attacks to diminish the ego. In fact, some people have a dark night of the soul experience to diminish the ego. We have to learn that the ego is number 2 and our spiritual mind is number 1. And when we get that straightened out, our life becomes more harmonious. As we entered into the promised land, I always question, well, why did those who left Egypt and go to the promised land not be able to go into the promised land? They were in the desert for 40 years, which is symbolic of a long time. Well, the reason the elders could not enter the promised land because the elders represented the old thoughts and the old ideas. Only their children could go into the promised land, the new thought and the new ideas. The spiritual mind could go into the promised land. Even Moses could not go into the promised land. See, metaphysically, the story is much richer, much more touching. I think that rather than study the Bible as a literal, historical document, once we realize that the allegories and the myths and the stories and the history is symbolic, and if we interpret it allegorically and symbolically, we can get below the surface of the Word into the spirit of the Word. In Judaism, the Kabbalists study each letter, each alphabetical letter in each word, and there's a meaning to each letter and to each word, and they have meditation exercises to meditate on each letter of the Hebrew alphabet. That's how sacred the Holy Bible is.